The FBI was working nonstop to prevent Garrison's investigation from going forward. And one of the ways that Mark Felt, formerly later to be Deep Throat, rather, did that was to get involved with the investigator for the Attorney General's office, Frank Manning, up in Baton Rouge, and to see what dirt they could find about Jim Garrison. And Felt was superintending all of this business about how Garrison's sex life and his sexual proclivities and all of this as a way of trying. They did everything that they could to destroy Jim Garrison. They stole his files. They accused him of crimes. They accused him of taking bribes. They accused him of protecting the mafia. They accused him of being homosexual at that time, a big stain on you. They accused him of being a transvestite, even. So they didn't know what he was crazy. His mother was crazy. He was crazy. He was thrown out of the army because he was crazy. They did everything they could to discredit. Well, why would they do so much to discredit Jim Garrison? One has to conclude that he had the truth. He didn't have all the evidence, and he didn't have it at the time of the Clay Short trial, but he had his man, and I'm going to stand by that. David Morales was certainly involved in the Guatemala business. He was, Gaten Funzi did a lot of work in his book, The Last Investigation, about David Morales. I think he closes his book on that. He could I don't really know, but certainly he was one of the people that was roaming and involved. Yeah. I think the Kennedy assassination is important for people to know about today because it predicts the current attacks on the Constitution by George W. Bush. I think once President Kennedy was gone and a president of the United States could be assassinated on the streets of a major American city by forces within the United States government, anything was possible. The rule of law no longer applied. The day that the press endorsed the Warren Report, and they did almost universally, that was the day we lost a free press. The press became embedded in the government. And so when we talk about press being embedded in Iraq, that's nothing new. They have already been bought and paid for by corporations. Newspapers are corporations, and they're not about to criticize or challenge anything that a president does. I noticed in yesterday's newspaper, I noticed an article in which the Pentagon has decided to do, this is sort of, if they go too far, then they pull back. The Pentagon decided that they would no longer keep certain illegal surveillance records. Tiny article in the New York Times at the end of Section 1. Now, if you were a press that was really free and independent, you'd put that as a big banner story on page 1, not a tiny little story at the back of the newspaper. So with the Kennedy assassination, we lost a free press. We lost the rule of law, because if the people who killed the President of the United States aren't brought to justice, and we have a dishonest commission that serves in place of law enforcement, then the law no longer exists in this country. And so when we get the challenges by the Bush administration to habeas corpus, when we get Patriot Acts, when we get illegal domestic surveillance, all of these things directly flow from the fact that nobody was brought to justice for the murder of President Kennedy. So the Kennedy assassination is important, not because we want to look back at the Kennedys as glory days, Camelot, and something that a government that we wish we had today, because I don't think we do. The Kennedys were not peace-loving doves or anything like that. They were politicians. But because the horrendous death of President Kennedy has really destroyed the democratic fabric of this country.
If anybody gets arrested or suffers or anything else, I just think that's exactly...
It's a principle that's involved.
Exactly. That's exactly my feel. What was I going to ask you?
You notice how few politicians there are that even want to raise the issue of the Kennedy assassination.
It's unbelievable.
And when Gerald Ford died, not long ago, within a year or so, and George H.W. Bush made the eulogy, he took a point to start talking about the Warren Commission again and how Gerald Ford did such a great job and so forth. So what is that about? It's saying, it's almost like Oswald saying, give me John Act as my lawyer. Mm-hmm. It's a way of saying he stayed with the program.
Exactly.
And we don't want the truth. But notice how the Kennedy assassination is on their minds.
I know.
They can't forget it. Involuntary, because there's not too bright. He should never brought it up. But see, because it's something that they carry guilt about. I mean, after all, the name of the Bay of Pigs operation was called Zapata, which is the name of Bush's oil company company, and one of the ships was the Barbara, which is the name of his wife. So they're intimately connected with the anti-Castro fights to kill Castro. And here the Bushes are right in the middle of this, the movement of power from the east to the west. The power representing the east, the liberals, people like Kennedy and the Rockefellers. This changes with the death of President Kennedy. Power goes to the defense contractors, the Halliburtons, the Brown and Roots, the D.H. Byrds, the Bushes. And why were the Bushes from Connecticut moving west? Something was in the air. Yes, I would like to see on my wish list of documents that I know are sitting in the National Archives, all the records of the Church Committee. We only have about, I believe, maybe 25 to 30% of the records open. And in particular, among the Church Committee records that I would like to see released are those customs depositions that show that if we could show that Oswald also worked for U.S. Customs, that would really underline the point of how he was a government agent. So if you ask me what I would like to see released, at the top of the list are those depositions from customs officers, because they were honest.
Great.
We have the summaries of those depositions, so we know what they're going to say, but we don't have the full depositions. I would also like to see the Ores Pena deposition released. I don't believe we have that full deposition either.
Great.